Wow, I sort of winged it there. That was not good. Nope. From the top. The internet has enabled the formation of communities that span across the globe and are as varied in their focus as they are numerous. This in turn has paved the way for online activism. While many internet communities discuss trivialities such as video games, film, and popular culture, others are home to serious discussion on political and social issues and serve as a hub to rally offline activism. The internet may have given the world the opportunity to be informed and take action, but the real question is, as an audience, are we leveraging our collective voices into effective offline action? Online political activism's ultimate goal is to influence the offline realm. Yet how effective are online grassroots movements in affecting change where it really matters? According to interviews conducted by Eaton with leaders from MoveOn.org, an online advocacy group, only 10 to 20% of its 4.5 million users have ever participated in offline activism. This statistic forces us to ask the following questions. What can online activism accomplish? How does it accomplish it? And what are its limitations? Online activism stems from the belief that the internet, namely through social media, has a democratizing effect. That simply by virtue of being online, democracy will spread to those who don't already enjoy it. However, as Hoffman and Kornwitz explain, while in the developed world, 71.6% of the population is online, this proportion drops to 21.1% in developing countries. On a global scale then, in 2010, about 70% of the world's inhabitants were not using the internet. Already, online activism's effectiveness is called into question on the basis of the economic, social, and technological barriers in place in developing countries which restrict internet access. Hoffman and Kornwitz argue that new technology does not directly impact the democratizing process because its fundamental ingredients are an active, well-informed citizenry which has the means to debate freely and whose opinions are taken into account by those who govern. Ultimately, we can deduce that democracy leads to increased internet access, and not the other way around. This is contrary to the popular belief that revolutions are started by online grassroots movements. Ganesh describes this view as a common narrative created by the West where authoritarian regimes in far-off lands such as Iran, Tunisia, Egypt, Bahrain, and now Libya are dramatically undermined by the free flow of information enabled by new technologies. He attributes this common misconception to the fact that it is far easier to boast about social media's role in the creation of a protest or other social unrest due to the spreading of anti-government sentiment than it is to fully inform the public on their actual causes. In Egypt, for example, where Hosni Mubarak, the then president, stepped down from his office after mass protests and rioting, the unrest was actually due to soaring food prices and the public anger about corruption, rather than the citizenry's access to information provided by social media. According to Ganesh, there must first be social unrest in order for protests to take place. As previously mentioned, the internet and social media create a vast network of interconnected communities. This is one of the most significant aspects of the internet, the ability for absolutely any issue to be examined, explored, and discussed through a variety of perspectives. Na, Veenstra, and Shaw contend that online interpersonal networks are a prime mechanism for the information exchange necessary for political discussion as well as recruitment into political activities and social movement groups. This is in strong contrast to the elite-controlled mass media which dominates offline life. Indeed, according to Steingrim and her research into indiemedia.org and the anti-globalization perspective that it offers, rather than being mesmerized by mainstream media's blurbs about and glossy images of embattled police tear-gassing anarchist protesters, citizens could look instead to the local and first-hand perspectives available on Indie Media's website, which received 1.5 million hits during the World Trade Organization Seattle protests alone. So it's clear that the internet and online activism provides an alternative voice which promotes public discourse, a key ingredient to a healthy democracy. But does any of this online activity have any significant offline ramifications? The internet's biggest advantage, being able to reach a mass audience on a number of issues, is also its most significant weakness. The internet audience is a highly fragmented one, which results in the confinement of online activism to a few secluded communities. As people cater their information intake ever more to their pre-established opinions, Hoffman and Kornwitz suggest that there is still an inherent reliance on mainstream mass media to bring burgeoning issues to the forefront of people's thoughts before they begin to actively engage them in social media. This suggests that the mere fact of posting online does not promote democratic conversation. According to one study, 71% of Twitter posts do not garner a response. While social media makes it easier for the individual to engage, Hoffman and Cornwitz believe that greater participation does not equate to more meaningful participation and thus a more vibrant democracy. Quite the opposite, in fact. These new forms of engagement might lead to what can be termed virtual participation, where clicking on a thumbs up icon on your desktop substitutes for more costly, time-consuming, and potentially more thought-through real-life activism, where going public is confused with making a difference, speaking up with being heard. Social media and the online activism that takes place through the internet appears to not be the democratizing tool that it is made out to be by the West. So what sort of collective action can we achieve through the use of this relatively new medium? For Wu Young, the most important aspect of online interaction for the politics of democratic communication is that multiple actors are actively engaged in horizontal communication. So instead of seeing the dissemination of information and opinions from media-owning elites at the top to the public at the bottom, which is commonly associated with traditional mainstream media, the internet allows for open discussion and exchange of ideas between the people and decision makers. This is based on the transformation that South Korea underwent in the late 1990s as it transitioned from an authoritarian regime to a democratically elected leader. Though South Korea now enjoyed democracy, the traditional media was still dominated by a conservative monopoly, which translated into conservative politics. Koreans, through their use of alternative news media, subverted the effects of traditional conservative media and eventually achieved political reform in the 2004 National Assembly election after the Reformist Party won a majority. It would appear that the online activism through social media can in fact lead to a rallying support, provided the infrastructure is there first. China serves as a good example of developing states and authoritarian regimes which, though still largely in control over the free flow of information, are forced to negotiate and bargain with their active online community, lest they suffer the consequences. Stanley explains, there is a clear concern that policies that deviate too far from public expectation might affect the overriding value, which is promoting social stability. That is why you see the ebb and flow of policy, often with lack of consistency. Traditionally, the Great Firewall of China has been a symbol associated with censorship and oppression. However, as Stanley suggests, as China's authorities are forced to allow banned content to flow, it may eventually become nothing more than a minor inconvenience. It could be argued that merely by allowing a voice to be heard, social change is being effected. We see that the internet can be a useful tool to rally support for a cause and fight against popular opinion, though it turns out it can also be used to reinforce it. According to Vakari, the internet played a major role in the 2004 presidential election and saw the internet as the new campaign battleground for politicians looking to reach the 145 million American internet users, not to try to revolutionize the political system by converting new voters, but to increase their own voter turnout. Jackson and Lilleker applied gratification theory to an online context and explained that the internet could be an effective means of contacting people and then developing a dialogue that helps them move up the ladder of advocacy to eventually become champions on behalf of the sender. Basically, thanks to the push technology prevalent on the internet, users are increasingly becoming activists on behalf of the senders whose opinions they subscribe to. Because of the relationship that is formed between those that have voluntarily subscribed to a form of newsletter, be it ISS feed, Twitter, or traditional email, and the sender of said opinions, a feeling that they have a stake in what is being discussed will make them want to actively campaign for the sender. This sort of message trafficking can take a variety of forms, but are most effective through visuals. Social media and the internet are particularly effective is in the inexpensive propagation of images and other visual stimuli which allow the audience to form a personal connection with the issue. The 2007-2008 strike by the Writers Guild of America demonstrates how through the use of the internet and against an opponent with vastly greater resources, a movement can create a shared identity between its members through character, rhetoric, and use of image. Writers were fully aware of the power of the image and a good laugh, and they put their energy and creativity into producing smart, witty, pointed videos that explain the strike and how viewers support the WGA's effort, says Banks of the Guild's use of image to garner support for the cause. The WGA provided a united front with which it could rally support and attempt to win the public opinion with practically no budget, something that is exclusive to the internet. I think we're in a better position to establish what online activism is and isn't, what it can and cannot do. We are forced to rethink the allegedly inherent democratizing ability of the internet. By virtue of being online alone, we cannot be certain that dramatic social change will be enacted. We can, however, nearly guarantee that public discourse will occur. The internet allows for inexpensive horizontal communication between communities and the propagation of ideas in a way that the traditional news media could never hope to or want to. In this sense, the internet gives people the power, but it's still in the hands of the people to use it. Twitter didn't cause Mubarak to step down. The angry citizens in the streets did, and it's important that we never confuse the two. I'm going to go with it a little bit not so strong. The internet has enabled the form. The internet has enabled. Yeah, you know what? I wasn't paying attention. Shouldn't pull on theirs. And this is why.